My wife wished I'd disappear at dinner. So I smiled and said, "Moving truck comes at 9." She laughed, thinking I was joking. But for 18 years, I've investigated insurance fraud for a living. I know how cheaters hide money, cover tracks, and eliminate obstacles. She had no idea I'd been watching. My name is Lester Whitman. I'm 52 years old, and for the past 18 years, I've worked as a manager of insurance claim payouts for Midwest Mutual. It's not glamorous work, but it pays well, and it taught me something valuable: how to document everything, how to follow paper trails, and how to spot when someone's lying about their losses. The dinner that changed everything happened on a Tuesday night in November. Darlene had invited her book club friends over, the usual suspects who spent more time gossiping than reading. Our dining room table was set with her good china, the stuff we only used when she wanted to impress people. The smell of her famous pot roast filled the house, and for a moment, I almost felt like we were a normal family again. Curtis, our oldest at 29, had driven down from Chicago where he worked at some high-end law firm. He sat at one end of the table, checking his phone every few minutes, probably billing hours even during dinner. Casey, our middle child and the family peacekeeper, tried to keep conversation flowing. At 27, she had this way of reading people that came from her psychology training. William, our youngest at 24, was there in body only, his attention split between his plate and whatever game was running on his phone under the table. "Lester, could you pass the wine?" Darlene asked, her voice carrying that particular tone she used when she wanted to sound sophisticated for her friends. I reached for the bottle, refilled her glass, and caught the look she exchanged with her friend Margaret. It was the kind of look that said volumes, the barely concealed eye roll, the slight shake of the head. I'd seen it before, but tonight it hit differently. "You know what I wish?" Darlene said, raising her glass slightly, her voice carrying across the suddenly quiet room. "I wish he'd just disappear sometimes." The words hung in the air like smoke from a house fire. Margaret nervous laughed. Curtis looked up from his phone. Casey's fork stopped halfway to her mouth. William didn't even notice, still lost in his game. I set down the wine bottle carefully and looked at my wife of 25 years. "Well," I said, keeping my voice steady as Sunday morning, "moving truck comes at 9 tomorrow." Darlene laughed, too loud, too forced. "Moving where?" she asked, like it was all some joke we were sharing. I smiled without blinking. "You'll find out." The silence that followed was deafening. Margaret cleared her throat. Curtis finally put his phone down. Casey was staring at me like she was seeing me for the first time. Even William looked up from his screen. But something had shifted in that moment. Something fundamental. I wasn't the same man who had sat down to dinner an hour earlier. That man would have laughed it off, made some self-deprecating joke, apologized for existing. This man, the one sitting here now, was done apologizing. I finished my meal in silence, helped clear the plates like I always did, and excused myself to my study. Behind my locked door, I opened a laptop I kept hidden in my old toolbox, the one Darlene never bothered to look inside. Time to start documenting everything. After all, I was an expert at investigating false claims. The house was quiet by 10:30. Darlene had retreated to the master bedroom with her second bottle of wine and some trashy reality show. The kids had scattered to their respective corners. Curtis to his childhood room, where he'd set up a makeshift office, Casey to the guest room, and William to the basement where his gaming setup ruled like a neon-lit kingdom. I sat in my study, door locked, surrounded by 25 years of what I thought was a life well lived. File cabinets lined one wall, filled with tax returns, insurance policies, mortgage documents, the paper trail of a responsible man. Tonight, those same documents would become my weapons. The laptop hummed to life, its screen casting blue light across my face. For 18 years, I'd investigated insurance fraud for a living. I knew how cheaters operated, how they hid money, how they covered their tracks. The difference was, this time I wasn't investigating a stranger's lies. I started with our joint bank accounts. Midwest Mutual had taught me to look for patterns, anomalies, transactions that didn't fit. It didn't take long to find them. ATM withdrawals from locations I'd never been to. Restaurant charges when I was traveling for work. Hotel stays in cities that had nothing to do with her book club or sister visits. My fingers moved across the keyboard like a pianist playing a funeral march. Each keystroke brought another piece of evidence to light. Credit card statements showed charges at jewelry stores, expensive pieces I'd never seen her wear. spa treatments at places I'd never heard of, gas purchases that didn't match her claimed whereabouts. The most damning discovery came at 11:47 p.m. A recurring monthly transfer of $500 from our joint savings to an account I didn't recognize. The transfer had been happening for 2 years. 24 payments. $12,000 of her money gone. I cross-referenced the account number with public records. The trail led to a Daniel Morrison, age 34, address on Maple Street. Exactly 7 miles from the yoga studio where Darlene claimed she spent her Tuesday evenings. But the real jackpot came when I accessed her cloud backup, something she'd never bothered to password protect because she assumed I was too technologically challenged to find it. Photos, messages, calendar entries. A digital diary of deception that would make even the most creative insurance fraudster jealous. The photos were tasteful but telling. Dinner dates, weekend trips, hotel room selfies. The messages were worse. Years of conversation with Daniel, discussing their future together, complaining about her boring husband who never notices anything. One message from 3 months ago made my blood run cold. I wish Lester would just disappear so we could be together properly. Maybe I should help him along. I screenshot everything, organized it into folders, uploaded copies to 3 separate cloud accounts. In my business, backup documentation was everything. The case against Darlene Whitman was now ironclad. By 2 a.m., I had enough evidence to bury her in any divorce court in the country. But divorce wasn't what I had in mind. She wanted me to disappear. I'd grant her wish, just not the way she expected. I closed the laptop and looked around my study one last time. Tomorrow, the real work would begin. Wednesday morning arrived with the kind of crisp November air that makes you feel alive. I've been up since 5, not from insomnia, but from purpose. 25 years of marriage had taught me Darlene's schedule down to the minute. She'd sleep until 9, stumble to the kitchen for coffee, then spend an hour on social media before her first wine glass of the day. That gave me a 4-hour window. The storage unit sat on the outskirts of town, tucked between a defunct auto parts store and a laundromat that had seen better decades. Unit 247 had been mine for 8 years, rented under my mother's maiden name, and paid for with cash from separate account Darlene never knew existed. Insurance work taught you to plan for contingencies. The metal door rolled up with a screech that echoed through the empty corridor. Inside, boxes lined the walls like soldiers at attention. 20 years of careful documentation, all labeled with my precise handwriting. Tax records 2015 to 2018. Medical bills. Home improvements. But these weren't what I'd come for. The real treasure sat hidden behind a false wall I constructed during weekend trips Darlene assumed were fishing expeditions. The hidden compartment contained everything a man needed to disappear properly. Birth certificates, passport, driver's license, all issued under a carefully crafted alternate identity. Cash in various denominations, totaling $60,000. Precious metals that couldn't be traced through electronic transfers. But most importantly, it contained my insurance policy against Darlene. I pulled out the metal briefcase and set it on my makeshift workbench. Inside lay years of documentation I'd hoped I'd never need to use. Photos of her, with Daniel Morrison, taken during my supposed business trips. Bank statements showing the diverted funds. Text message printouts that would make a divorce lawyer weep with joy. The centerpiece of my collection was a USB drive containing security footage from Daniel's apartment building. It turned out the building's security company was a client of Midwest Mutual. A few professional favors had gotten me access to their archived footage. 3 months of Darlene's Tuesday book club meetings, documented in high-definition video. I transferred copies of everything to multiple cloud accounts, then packaged the originals into 3 separate sets. One set would go to my safety deposit box, another to Casey, with instructions to open only if something happened to me. The third would wait for the right moment to make its dramatic appearance. My phone buzzed with a text from Casey. "Dad, are you okay? Mom's asking where you are." I typed back, "Tell her I'm at the office." Emergency claim investigation. It wasn't entirely a lie. I was investigating a claim. The claim that Darlene Whitman deserved a single penny of what we'd built together. By noon, I was back at the house, acting like the same invisible husband who'd sat through dinner the night before. But everything had changed. I now held all the cards in a game Darlene didn't even know we were playing. The law offices of Morrison, Blake and Associates occupied the top floor of downtown's only respectable high-rise. I'd chosen them specifically because they weren't Curtis's firm. Family loyalty only went so far when you were planning a strategic strike. Jonathan Blake himself had agreed to see me, probably because Midwest Mutual represented significant business for his firm. Corporate insurance cases generated steady billable hours, and Blake was nothing if not practical about money. "Lester, good to see you," Blake said, gesturing to the leather chair across from his mahogany desk. "What can I do for you today?" I placed the first folder on his desk. "I need some legal advice." Hypothetically speaking. Blake raised an eyebrow, but opened the folder. His expression shifted as he reviewed the financial records, the photographs, the documented timeline of deception. 23 years of practicing law had given him a poker face, but even he couldn't hide his surprise at the thoroughness of my evidence. "This is quite comprehensive," Blake said finally. "Your hypothetical client has done his homework." "My hypothetical client works in insurance investigation," I replied. "He knows how to build a case." Blake turned to the second folder, containing the Swiss bank account information I'd discovered buried in Darlene's personal files. She'd been skimming money for 3 years, thinking I was too trusting to notice the missing funds from our joint accounts. "Your client's spouse has been busy," Blake observed. "This level of financial deception suggests premeditation. A jury would see this as evidence of systematic fraud." "What about the children?" I asked. 3 adult kids, one still in school." Blake leaned back in his chair. "With this evidence, any judge would see the innocent party as the victim of spousal financial abuse. Child support wouldn't apply to adults, and the dependent son's education costs could be secured through the settlement." I opened a third folder, revealing the photographs and communication records between Darlene and Daniel Morrison. Blake's eyebrows climbed higher as he reviewed the explicit messages detailing their plans to eliminate the obstacle, meaning me. "Lester," Blake said, dropping the hypothetical pretense, "this woman was planning to divorce you and take everything. These messages suggest she was considering more extreme measures." "That's why I'm here," I said. "I want to disappear before she can make her move. Legally, financially, completely." Blake was quiet for several minutes, studying the evidence. "This isn't just a divorce case," he said finally. "This is financial self-defense. With documentation this solid, we could pursue criminal charges for fraud, embezzlement, and conspiracy." "I don't want criminal charges," I said. "I want justice." She wished I would disappear. I'm going to grant that wish and take everything she thought she was going to steal. Blake smiled, the kind of smile that made opposing lawyers nervous. "When do we start?" "Tomorrow," I replied. "By Friday, Darlene Whitman will discover that wishes sometimes come true in ways you never expected." The confrontation I'd been dreading came Sunday morning over breakfast. Casey sat across from me at the kitchen table, her psychology training evident in how she studied my face while stirring her coffee. "Dad, we need to talk," Casey said. "Something's been different since Tuesday night. Mom's been acting strange, Curtis is asking questions, and William actually looked up from his games yesterday to ask if you and Mom are getting divorced." Darlene was upstairs, probably nursing another hangover, which gave us privacy for this conversation I've been avoiding. "Your mother made her feelings clear at dinner," I said. "I'm just responding accordingly." Casey leaned forward. "Dad, I know you. You don't make dramatic statements unless you mean them. When you said the thing about the moving truck, you weren't joking." I set down my coffee cup and looked at my daughter, the one person in this house who'd inherited my ability to see through deception. "Casey, how long have you known about your mother's activities?" Her face fell. "You found out about Daniel." 2 years of evidence," I said. "Financial records, photos, messages. She's been planning to leave me and take everything we've built. The only question was timing." Casey was quiet for several minutes. "Curtis doesn't know," she said finally. "He thinks you're having some kind of midlife crisis. William's too distracted by his gaming addiction to notice anything." "And what do you think?" I asked. "I think Mom's been emotionally abusive for years, and you finally decided to stop taking it," Casey said. "I also think you're planning something that goes beyond just divorce papers." Before I could respond, Curtis walked into the kitchen. At 29, he carried himself like a successful attorney, which made his next words sting even more. "Dad, I need to know what's going on," Curtis said. Mom called me crying last night, saying you've been acting threatening and she's scared of you. I stared at my oldest son. Scared of me. She says you've been going through her things, following her, making weird comments about disappearing. Curtis continued. If you're having some kind of breakdown, we can get you help. But you can't take it out on Mom. Casey's jaw tightened. Curtis, you need to hear Dad's side before you. I don't need to hear anything, Curtis interrupted. I've seen this before with clients. Middle-aged men who can't handle their wives becoming independent, so they start surveillance and intimidation tactics. The irony was overwhelming. My own son, trained to evaluate evidence, had already convicted me without seeing a single piece of proof. Curtis, I said calmly, your mother has been having an affair for 2 years. She's stolen $12,000 from our joint accounts. She's been planning to divorce me and claim I was abusive to maximize her settlement. Curtis laughed dismissively. Dad, you're paranoid. Mom wouldn't. I pulled out my phone and showed him one of the photos. Darlene and Daniel Morrison kissing outside the Riverside Hotel. Curtis's expression shifted from dismissive to shocked to defensive in the space of 10 seconds. This doesn't prove anything, he said finally. Maybe she was lonely. Maybe you drove her to it. That's when I knew I was truly alone in this fight. Monday morning arrived like a storm front, inevitable and devastating. I'd been awake since 4 a.m., watching from my study window as the black sedan pulled into our driveway at exactly 9 o'clock. The car was unremarkable, a standard government-issue Ford with tinted windows and the kind of professional anonymity that made witnesses forget details. The man who stepped out wore a charcoal suit, carried a leather briefcase, and moved with the mechanical precision of someone who delivered bad news for a living. Victor Grimsby had been recommended by Jonathan Blake as the most discreet process server in the state. Former military, current professional ghost, he specialized in delivering documents that changed people's lives forever. From upstairs came the sound of Darlene's morning routine. Shower running, hair dryer whirring, the daily transformation from hungover housewife to whatever character she was playing today. The doorbell rang once. I stayed in my study, listening as Darlene's footsteps descended the stairs. She'd probably assumed it was a delivery, maybe flowers from Daniel, or a package she'd forgotten ordering during one of her wine-fueled online shopping sessions. The front door opened. Mrs. Darlene Whitman. Victor's voice carried the authority of a federal marshal. Yes, that's me. Is there a problem? Ma'am, I have documents that require your immediate attention. I heard the rustle of paper, then silence. The kind of silence that follows a lightning strike, when the thunder hasn't arrived yet, but you know it's coming. What is this? Darlene's voice had gone up an octave. Legal notice of asset seizure and marital dissolution, Victor replied. You have 72 hours to vacate the premises or face trespassing charges. This is impossible. My husband doesn't have a spine for her. Ma'am, your husband legally transferred all Marshall assets to a private trust as of Friday afternoon. This property, your vehicles, and all financial accounts are no longer accessible to you. The silence stretched longer this time. Where is he? Darlene's voice was barely a whisper. I'm not authorized to discuss Mr. Whitman's current location, Victor said. You'll find contact information for his legal representation in the packet. I heard the front door close, then Darlene's footsteps running toward my study. She rattled the locked door handle. Lester, what have you done? But I wasn't Lester anymore. That man had disappeared Tuesday night at dinner, vanishing as completely as if he'd never existed. The man sitting in this study was someone else entirely, someone who'd learned that the cruelest revenge wasn't anger or violence. It was giving people exactly what they wished for. Wednesday afternoon brought the collapse I'd been anticipating. From my new apartment on Riverside Drive, a place Darlene didn't know existed, I watched through binoculars as she stumbled out of what used to be our house, 2 suitcases in hand and desperation written across her face. She'd spent the morning calling everyone in her contact list. Her sister had hung up after 5 minutes. Her book club friends suddenly weren't answering their phones. Even Daniel Morrison had stopped returning her messages once he realized his meal ticket had evaporated. My phone rang. Casey's name appeared on the screen. Dad, where are you? She asked. Mom's having a complete breakdown. She's saying you've stolen everything and abandoned the family. I haven't abandoned my family, I said. I've removed myself from a toxic situation. There's a difference. Curtis wants to file a missing persons report. He thinks you've had some kind of mental health episode. I pulled out the tablet containing all my evidence. Casey, I'm going to send you some files. After you review them, we'll talk again. Dad, whatever evidence you think you have. Financial records showing your mother stole $15,000. Photos of her with Daniel Morrison spanning 2 years. Text messages discussing how to eliminate the obstacle, meaning me. Bank statement from a Swiss account she opened without my knowledge. The line went quiet. Send me everything, Casey said finally. I transmitted the files electronically, then waited. 20 minutes later, my phone rang again. Oh my God, Casey whispered. Dad, she was planning to. This message about the life insurance policy. She wanted me gone, I said. I'm simply accommodating her request in the most legal way possible. What about William? He's completely lost without structure. His gaming addiction is getting worse, and now with you gone. William will be fine, I said. The trust fund I established will pay for his education and any treatment he needs. Curtis gets his inheritance early, though he probably won't thank me for it. You get financial security and the truth about your mother. Casey was crying now. This is so messed up. Our family is destroyed. Our family was destroyed the moment your mother decided I was disposable, I said. I'm just controlling how the pieces fall. Thursday morning brought the next phase. William called me, his voice shaking. Dad, Mom's saying you've abandoned us. She's talking about selling her jewelry, maybe moving in with Grandma Rose. She keeps crying and saying she never meant for things to go this far. What do you think she meant to happen? I asked. I don't know. I never paid attention to the fighting. I just wanted everyone to leave me alone so I could play my games. William, your gaming is an escape from a family that was falling apart long before this week. Maybe now you can deal with reality instead of hiding from it. Are you ever coming home? The question hit harder than I'd expected. Son, home isn't a place anymore. It's wherever you find peace. That house stopped being home the day your mother decided I didn't belong there. I'm scared, William admitted. You should be, I said. Fear means you're finally awake. Friday brought the revelation I'd been saving for last. Dr. Rebecca Sterling called me at 7 a.m., her voice carrying the weight of professional confidentiality about to be broken. Lester, I need to see you immediately. There's something about your family situation that you need to know. Sterling's office felt different this time. Less like a sanctuary, more like a confessional. She sat across from me with a thick file that bore my family's name. I've been treating your family for 3 years, she began. Individual sessions with Darlene, couples counseling that you thought was helping, family therapy that was supposed to bring everyone together. I remember, I said. You told us we were making progress. Lester, your wife has been manipulating the therapeutic process from the beginning. She convinced me you were emotionally abusive, financially controlling, potentially dangerous. My blood chilled. What are you saying? She's been building a legal case against you using my professional assessments. She wanted documented evidence that you were unstable, that she feared for her safety, that divorce was her only option for survival. Sterling opened the file, revealing pages of notes written in her precise handwriting. She described incidents that never happened, claimed you threatened her, isolated her from friends, monitored her activities obsessively. But you know that's not true, I said. You've met with me dozens of times. That's exactly why I'm telling you this, Sterling said. Your behavior in therapy was consistently calm, rational, cooperative. You never displayed any of the controlling tendencies she described. In fact, you seemed almost resigned to whatever she wanted. She turned to another page. But here's what really concerns me. 3 weeks ago, Darlene asked me to modify my notes to strengthen her case. When I refused, she suggested that my professional license might be in jeopardy if I didn't cooperate. She threatened you? Subtly, but yes. She implied she had connections who could make my practice disappear if I didn't play along with her narrative. I stared at the file, understanding finally dawning. She's been planning this for 3 years. Not just the affair, not just the financial theft. She's been building a legal foundation to destroy me completely. Lester, there's more. She asked me about medications that could cause confusion, memory loss, accidents that might look natural. The room went cold. She was researching how to kill me. I can't prove that legally, Sterling said. But professionally, I believe she was exploring options that went far beyond divorce. I stood up, pacing to the window. Doctor, I need copies of everything. Every note, every session record, every time she tried to manipulate your assessments. I can't ethically release therapeutic records without a court order. Then I'll get one, I said, because this isn't just about divorce anymore. This is evidence of conspiracy to commit murder. Sterling closed the file slowly. Lester, be very careful. If she's willing to manipulate a therapist and plan your elimination, there's no telling what else she might do when she realizes her plans have failed. That afternoon, I called Jonathan Blake with new instructions. We weren't just protecting assets anymore. We were building a criminal case that would ensure Darlene never got the chance to hurt anyone else. Sometimes disappearing wasn't enough. Sometimes you had to make sure the threat disappeared too. 6 months later, I sat in the courtroom watching Darlene face the consequences of her choices. The evidence I'd gathered had been thorough enough to support federal charges for fraud, conspiracy, and attempted murder. Her defense attorney looked defeated before the trial even began. Casey sat beside me, her hand squeezing mine as the judge read the verdict. Guilty on all counts. 25 years to life. Dad, Casey whispered, I'm sorry I didn't see it sooner. You weren't supposed to see it, I said. Children shouldn't have to protect their parents from each other. Curtis had testified for the prosecution, his legal training finally overcoming his blind loyalty to his mother. The evidence was too overwhelming to ignore. Financial records, surveillance footage, recorded conversations, and most damning of all, the poison found in her possession when FBI agents arrested her. William had gotten clean during the trial, his gaming addiction finally addressed through therapy I'd arranged through the trust fund. He'd testified about the attempts to recruit him as an accomplice, his voice steady despite the tears. She asked me to put something in your coffee, he'd told the court. Said it would just make you sleepy, so she could search your office. But I knew it was more than that. I knew she wanted you gone. After the sentencing, we gathered at Casey's apartment. My 3 children, finally united by truth instead of divided by lies. What happens now? William asked. Now we rebuild, I said. We start over as a family that tells the truth to each other. Curtis looked at me with something approaching respect for the first time in years. Dad, I owe you an apology. I was so focused on defending her that I couldn't see what she really was. She was your mother, I said. Loyalty isn't a character flaw, son. But wisdom means knowing when loyalty becomes dangerous. Casey pulled out an envelope marked for Dad after the trial. Inside was a letter in Darlene's handwriting, dated 6 months earlier. Lester, it read, I know you'll never forgive me, and you shouldn't. I became someone I didn't recognize, and I dragged our children into my darkness. You were a good husband, and I destroyed that out of greed and selfishness. Take care of them. They deserve better than what I gave them. I folded the letter carefully. It didn't change anything, but it was something, an acknowledgement of guilt from someone who'd spent years denying responsibility. Are you ever coming home? William asked. I looked at my children, scarred but healing, damaged but still capable of love. I am home, I said. Home isn't a building. It's wherever your family chooses to be honest with each other. 2 years after Darlene's conviction, I stood in the backyard of a new house, watching Casey teach her daughter how to throw a baseball. William was inside, working on his medical school applications with a focus he'd never shown for his games. Curtis visited every weekend, his arrogance replaced by humility that made him actually likable. The trust funds had provided for everyone's needs. Casey's psychology practice was thriving, helped by her first-hand experience with family trauma. William had graduated summa cum laude, his addiction replaced by genuine ambition. Curtis had left his corporate firm to become a public defender, saying he wanted to protect people instead of just making money. Victor Grimsby stopped by occasionally, bringing updates on other cases he'd handled for men like me. The disappearing husband business was apparently booming. Too many men discovering that their wives saw them as ATMs with legs. Any regrets? Victor asked during his last visit. I thought about it carefully. I regret that it took me 25 years to value myself enough to fight back. I regret that my children had to lose their mother to save their father. But I don't regret surviving. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Mr. Whitman, my name is Robert Chen. I think my wife is planning to kill me. Can we talk? I showed the message to Victor, who nodded grimly. Word gets around, he said. Men who've been through this recognize the signs in others. I typed back, meet me tomorrow at noon. Riverside Diner. Come alone and bring documentation. Because the truth about disappearing isn't that you vanish from the world. It's that you vanish from the version of yourself that accepted being treated as disposable. The man who'd sat quietly through years of humiliation was gone forever. The man who remained had learned that sometimes the most loving thing you can do for your family is refuse to let them destroy themselves by destroying you. Darlene had wished I would disappear. In a way, she got exactly what she wanted. The weak, passive husband she'd married had vanished completely. What remained was someone stronger, someone who understood that survival sometimes requires you to become the person you never thought you could be. Sometimes the best magic trick isn't making someone disappear. It's making them reappear as someone better.